Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are delighted to share with you different stories of love and betrayal from around the world. So now, let's begin today's story journey. I want to divorce you, you worthless man, Lydia coldly announced to Callum the evening after his father's funeral. The inheritance all goes to Vivian anyway. I don't want to waste any more time on a worthless man who can't even secure an inheritance. Callum raised his tired eyes, looking at the woman he once deeply loved. 6 years of marriage, so easily discarded in her eyes. The pain had already numbed him, and he simply nodded quietly. He knew that tomorrow the lawyer would read his father's will, but he had never thought to fight for anything. That ancestral land meant far more to him than money could measure. Yet fate always likes to play with coincidences. The next day, when lawyer Preston solemnly read the will and mentioned what Thaddeus had truly left for Callum, Lydia's face instantly turned pale. Hidden in that envelope was an invaluable secret. Callum's family land harbored a large deposit of rare earth minerals, with a potential value exceeding 1 billion Australian dollars. Darling, I didn't mean that. Lydia tried to grab Callum's hand, her eyes gleaming with greed. Callum pulled his hand away, his gaze cold. In that moment, he completely saw this woman's true face. 3 months earlier, in the twilight of Australia's outback, Callum was driving along a remote dirt road back to the ranch. He should have gone to check a distant fence, but the equipment malfunctioned, forcing him to return early. When he passed through a sparse eucalyptus grove, an unfamiliar SUV entered his vision, parked beside a path almost nobody knew about. It was the car Lydia had taken today. She said she was going to work in town, already the third time this month. An ominous feeling made Callum stop his car and quietly walk along the forest path. Under the shelter of bushes, he saw that scene. Lydia lying on the grass, a stranger's lips pressed against hers, his hands roaming over her body. Sunlight filtering through the leaves fell upon them, stinging Callum's eyes. Callum didn't immediately reveal himself. He just stood there, letting the reality of betrayal engulf him like a tide. Until Lydia accidentally looked up and saw her husband standing not far away. "Callum," she screamed, jumping up from the ground. This isn't what you think." What a weak excuse. Callum felt an unprecedented anger surging in his heart. He strode forward. The man had already stood up, adopting a defensive posture. "You're on my land." Callum's voice was deep and dangerous. "With my wife." "Listen, mate," the man tried to remain calm. "I'm Fletcher, project manager at Real Dev Company. I was just showing Mrs. Lydia some development possibilities." Callum didn't let him finish. Years of working on the ranch had given him surprising strength. He grabbed Fletcher's collar and pushed him against a eucalyptus tree. "Get off my land, get out of my life. If I see you near my house again, I swear you'll regret it." "Callum, stop!" Lydia screamed, grabbing his arm. "Are you crazy? This is a crime." Those words were like ice water poured over Callum's head. He released Fletcher, took a step back, seeing his wife standing next to another man, protecting him. The feeling of betrayal at that moment was deeper than when he discovered them being intimate. "I give you 1 hour to pack your things," Callum told Lydia, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Then leave my home." "You can't just throw me out," Lydia's voice trembled. "We need to talk. You don't understand how painful it's been for me living here all these years." "You've talked enough already." Callum turned and left, leaving Lydia and Fletcher standing there. It was this Fletcher he now knew, a real estate developer from Melbourne who had come to town 6 months ago, claiming to be exploring investment opportunities. Callum should have been more vigilant. Lydia had immediately shown unusual interest in Fletcher, frequently mentioning him and his grand plans. Callum wasn't unfamiliar with his wife's dissatisfaction. Lydia was from Sydney, a city girl with a marketing degree, dreaming of working at an advertising agency in the big city. She married Callum and followed him to this vast but remote land out of love. But as time passed, loneliness and monotony began eroding her enthusiasm. Callum had tried to change. He built a small studio for Lydia, installed the best network equipment, and supported her online service business. They went to Melbourne at least once a month so Lydia could maintain contact with her friends. Callum even took on more household chores so Lydia would have more time to do what she liked. But evidently, this wasn't enough. Fletcher's appearance gave Lydia an escape fantasy, a chance to return to city life. a future without enduring loneliness and monotony. Back at home, Callum sat in a porch chair, waiting for Lydia's return. The sky gradually darkened, the prairie wind blew gently, bringing the scent of soil and wild grass. This land was the only certain thing for him, the only thing that wouldn't betray him. When Lydia returned, night had already enveloped the ranch. She was alone, her face tired and weary. "I can explain," she said, standing at the door, her tone softening. "Fletcher only showed me another possibility, a future we could have together. This land has potential, Callum. If we're willing to change, we could build a resort or spa center here. Imagine, no more facing cattle every day, no more isolation from the world. This place could become a desired destination, not a forgotten corner." Callum stood up from his chair. "What kind of future is built on deception and betrayal? You don't understand how difficult it is for me to live here." Lydia's voice rose, with flashes of hurt and anger in her eyes. "For these 6 years, every day I've tried to adapt. Every day I've tried to find joy. But you? All your thoughts are on this land, on your cattle, on your fences and canals. Our marriage? My feelings? My dreams? Where are they, Callum? What place do they occupy in your life? So you chose to betray me." Callum's voice remained calm, but the pain in his eyes was undeniable. "Instead of sharing your feelings and thoughts with me." "I did share them," Lydia was almost shouting. "But you only care about this damn land. You'd rather see me wither here than consider a change. Fletcher at least can see me, understand my pain, appreciate my ideas and talents." Their argument continued into the night, revealing long-accumulated problems in their marriage. Lydia admitted her relationship with Fletcher had been going on for 3 months, and that Fletcher genuinely had business interest in the land. But what broke Callum's heart more was that Lydia seemed to have truly fallen in love with Fletcher, or at least with the life possibility he represented. "I won't leave," Lydia finally declared, a strange resolution in her voice. "This is my home, at least for now. If you want to end this marriage, you need to formally request a divorce." Callum didn't respond, simply turning and going upstairs, spending a sleepless night alone in the guest room. 2 weeks later, bad news arrived. Callum's father, Thaddeus, had died from a sudden heart attack. Thaddeus had always been Callum's strongest support, and although in recent years he spent most of his time at his Melbourne home, he was always the spiritual pillar of this land. Thaddeus's passing was a heavy blow to an already fragile family relationship. The funeral was held in Melbourne, with Callum's sister Vivian handling most arrangements. Vivian was a successful business consultant who had established her career in Melbourne over the years, with an already tenuous connection to the family land. At the funeral, Lydia behaved with propriety and decorum, but Callum could feel the distance in her heart. That same night, Lydia uttered the words that completely broke their relationship. "I want to divorce you. You worthless man. The inheritance all goes to Vivian anyway. I don't want to waste any more time on a worthless man who can't even secure an inheritance." Callum simply nodded wearily. The pain of losing his father intertwined with his wife's betrayal had left him almost numb. But fate's twist occurred the next day at the lawyer's office. Preston, Thaddeus's longtime legal advisor, after reading the regular distribution of inheritance, took out a special sealed envelope. "These are specific instructions from Mr. Thaddeus," said Preston, "only to be opened today, in the presence of all heirs." The contents of the envelope changed everything. According to a professional geological exploration company's report, Callum's family land harbored a massive deposit of high-grade rare earth minerals, with exploitation value conservatively estimated at over $1 billion Australian dollars. More importantly, Thaddeus had already successfully applied for priority exploration rights and partial development interests for these minerals, rights that now belonged to Callum. Lydia's reaction was the most violent. Her face went from shock to pallor, then to redness. She abruptly stood up, walked to Callum, and tried to take his hand. "Darling, I didn't mean that." Her voice trembled, with flashes of greed and regret in her teary eyes. "We can talk, right? We can solve our problems. I was just so sad, so tired. I love you, Callum. I've always loved you." Callum looked at her, feeling an unprecedented clarity and determination. He gently freed himself from Lydia's hand, stood up, and told Preston, "Thank you, Preston. I need time to absorb this information. When Callum left the lawyer's office, he knew his life would never be the same again. Behind him, Lydia's voice gradually faded, drowned by Melbourne's hustle and bustle. In the following months, Callum completely devoted himself to new development plans for the family land. He quickly formed a professional team, including geological experts, mining consultants, and legal teams, to fully evaluate the land's true value. At the same time, he took decisive legal action to cut all ties with Lydia. Lydia tried to reconcile through various means: phone, text messages, emails, even repeatedly appearing at his office door. She cried, begged, threatened, but Callum always maintained a calm and firm attitude. "We have nothing more to talk about," he told Lydia for the last time. "You once made it clear you didn't want to waste time on me. Now, I don't want to waste time on you either." The divorce process proceeded exceptionally quickly. Given the conclusive evidence of Lydia's infidelity and her express wish for divorce after the father's funeral, the court approved almost all conditions proposed by Callum. Lydia ultimately received compensation far below her expectations, with no rights to the valuable land or future mineral development. Meanwhile, Callum initiated an investigation into Fletcher and his company. It turned out that Real Dev Company had obtained preliminary information about possible mineral deposits on the land, but lacked conclusive evidence and legal exploration rights. Fletcher's strategy was to approach Lydia, on one hand to obtain more inside information, and on the other to prepare the ground for a possible low-price acquisition in the future. When Callum, with definitive exploration reports and ownership documents, publicly announced this discovery to the market, Fletcher and Real Dev Company were in trouble. Their previous maneuvers were exposed by the media, the company's stock plummeted, and regulatory bodies began investigating their business conduct. Most ironically, Callum's legal team discovered that Fletcher had secretly taken samples on Callum's land without permission, constituting a serious violation of rights. Callum chose a quiet but lethal form of revenge. He provided Fletcher's company's board of directors and major shareholders with all evidence of Fletcher's misconduct. At the same time, he indicated that as long as Fletcher remained with the company, Callum would refuse any form of cooperation with said company, including potential mineral development projects. The result was predictable. Fletcher was quickly fired by the company, and his reputation in the industry was completely destroyed. Fletcher tried to contact Lydia, hoping to count on her support. But by then, Lydia had already returned to Sydney, facing post-divorce life alone. Not only had she lost any rights to Callum's property, but she'd also lost many friends and social circles due to the sudden divorce and infidelity rumors. Fletcher's appearance would only worsen her situation. "Do you really think I want to see you?" Lydia told Fletcher on the phone, her voice full of disgust. "I've lost everything, and you? Where are all those wonderful futures you promised? Those promises about joint development? Those plans about starting a new life together in the city? It was all lies, Fletcher. You just used me to get close to Callum and his land." "I didn't use you, Lydia," Fletcher defended himself, with a hint of desperation in his voice. "I really liked you, and I truly believed that land had potential. I just didn't expect the potential to be so great, or that it would be discovered so quickly. We can still be together, start again." "Start again?" Lydia scoffed. "You have no home, no job. Your reputation is in ruins. And all this is due to your greed and deception." "No, Fletcher, I won't make the same mistake twice. I already lost someone who truly loved me because of a moment of weakness and dissatisfaction. I won't lose my self-respect for the same mistake." She hung up the phone and sat alone in her small Sydney apartment. Outside was the hustle and bustle of the city, the life she had so longed for. But at that moment, that bustle made her feel an unprecedented emptiness and loneliness. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Melbourne office building, falling on Callum's desk. On the desk were detailed geological reports and development plans, along with several letters of cooperation intent. A year ago, he was just a betrayed, fatherless farmer. Now, he was one of Australia's most prominent business figures. Callum's success exceeded all expectations. Following his professional team's advice, he didn't opt to immediately extract the minerals, but formulated a long-term, sustainable development plan. He established strategic alliances with several internationally renowned mining companies, ensuring that environmental impact during the extraction process would be minimal. At the same time, he designated part of the land as a protected area, preserving the authentic appearance of the ranch. Thaddeus would be proud of you, Vivian told Callum during a family gathering. You haven't just protected the family land, you've given it new life. Callum smiled and nodded, but deep in his heart there remained a void. Success couldn't completely alleviate the pain of betrayal. In his moments free from work, he sometimes stood alone on the high point of the ranch, looking into the distance, remembering those dreams and promises of the past. It wasn't longing for Lydia, but for that complete self he once was. In stark contrast to Callum's success was the downfall of Lydia and Fletcher. After being fired from the company, Fletcher tried various ways to return to the industry, but his reputation was completely ruined. No company wanted to hire someone who had tried to obtain business benefits through unethical means. With his savings depleted and credit card debts mounting, he was finally forced to leave Australia. Rumor had it he'd gone to some Southeast Asian country, where he worked as a consultant with a low salary. Lydia's situation wasn't optimistic either. After the divorce, she returned to Sydney and tried to restart her professional career. But the 6-year marriage gap left her at a disadvantage in the competitive job market. Added to age factors and the impact of infidelity rumors, she could only find temporary jobs with meager income and a tight life. Most ironic was that precisely that land she once detested had now become one of Australia's most coveted properties. Media reported that, thanks to Callum's mining project boosting local economic development, the once remote town was transforming into a new regional center. Housing prices were soaring and living facilities improving day by day. That future with luxury hotels and shopping centers that Lydia had dreamed of was becoming reality without her. One afternoon, a year and a half later, Callum was in a luxury cafe in Melbourne discussing project details with partners when his peripheral vision caught a familiar figure. Lydia standing on the sidewalk outside the cafe, looking at him through the glass window. She looked much thinner, her once radiant face now showing marks of years and hardship. She didn't enter, just stood there looking for a moment, then turned and left. Callum felt a surge of complex emotions, but quickly suppressed that feeling and returned to the business discussion. That night, Callum received an email from Lydia. She didn't beg for forgiveness or lament her situation. She simply expressed her congratulations for Callum's current achievements and acknowledged she had made irreparable mistakes. At the end of the email, she wrote, I finally understand that true value isn't in external success or wealth, but in honesty and loyalty. I lost these, and with them, I lost everything. Callum finished reading the email, moved it to the trash, and didn't reply. Not out of hatred. Hatred requires emotional investment, and he was no longer willing to invest emotions in Lydia, but because that relationship for him was completely over. Some betrayals, once occurred, cannot be repaired or compensated. 2 months later, Callum met Audra, an environmental law expert, at an environmental conference. She was reviewing environmental impact assessment reports related to Callum's company and became interested in his firm's sustainable development philosophy. Unlike Lydia, Audra had a deep understanding and love for the land and nature. She appreciated Callum's dedication to sustainable development, while he was attracted by her wisdom and independent spirit. Their relationship developed slowly, but with stability. Callum had learned not to give his heart away easily, and Audra respected his past and his boundaries. On the basis of shared values and goals, they gradually built a new type of relationship, more equal and of mutual understanding. I've heard your story, Audra said frankly on their third date, about your ex-wife and that land. People say you were lucky, but I see more than luck. I see someone who stayed true to his principles even in the most difficult moments. Callum looked deeply into her eyes. It's not an experience I like to remember. I understand. Audra nodded gently. Some scars need time. I won't ask you to forget or forgive. Those are your own decisions. I just want you to know that, if you want. I hope to be part of your future, not trying to replace or repair your past. This respect and understanding gave Callum a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. He began to believe that perhaps life really could move forward, that new possibilities were right in front of him. Meanwhile, Vivian's marriage also entered crisis. Her husband felt threatened by her success, and their relationship grew increasingly tense. After a heated argument, she temporarily moved to Callum's ranch with her 2 children. In the ranch's tranquil environment, Vivian and her children gradually regained calm. Callum, seeing his sister and niece and nephew running and playing on the prairie, felt a new warmth in his heart. This land, this home, was no longer just his refuge. It was becoming support and hope for more people. Do you really not regret it? Vivian asked one night, sitting on the porch looking at the stars, about Lydia. You loved each other very much. Callum was silent for a moment, then shook his head. I don't regret separating from her. I regret not seeing her true nature earlier, or the nature of our relationship. Our problems weren't just her infidelity or betrayal, but our fundamental differences about life and values. She would never understand what this land means to me, just as I would never understand her longing for urban life. We tried to change each other rather than accept each other. That was destined to fail. And Audra? Vivian asked curiously. Isn't she from the city too? Callum smiled. Yes, but the difference is she doesn't try to change me or this land. She appreciates its essence, just as I appreciate her independence and wisdom. We're not trying to meld into one person, but respecting each other's uniqueness, building connections on common ground. Vivian nodded, looking at her brother with understanding. He had grown a lot. No longer that young man who simply clung to the land, nor the husband full of anger after betrayal. He had found balance, had found new strength. 2 years later, Callum and Audra held a simple, warm wedding at the ranch. Only the closest family and friends attended. Audra didn't demand Callum move to the city, nor did Callum force Audra to completely adapt to ranch life. They found a balance between Melbourne and the ranch, each maintaining their work and interests while building a new life together. On the wedding day, Callum received an anonymous congratulatory card with a simple phrase, I wish you happiness. No signature, but he knew who had sent it. He put the card aside and returned to the joy of the wedding. As for Lydia, her life didn't turn out as she had hoped. In the years after the divorce, she tried various ways to rebuild her life, but the infamy of betrayal and self-doubt followed her like a shadow. She couldn't find stable work, her social circle shrank, and old friends gradually distanced themselves. Finally, she accepted a position at a small company, away from Sydney, starting a new life in Canberra. Occasionally, she saw news about Callum, his business success, his environmental projects, his marriage to Audra. Each time she saw these news items, she felt a bitter regret, not for losing wealth, but because her short-sightedness and infidelity had cost her someone who truly loved and respected her. One day, Lydia saw a news item in a cafe. Callum and Audra were announcing a major ecological conservation plan. They would permanently designate a third of the family lands as a nature reserve, while building a sustainable community center, offering education and employment opportunities for local residents. In the report, Callum stood on that land Lydia once considered a prison, smiling, alongside Audra, who was also smiling. Lydia turned off her phone and looked out the window. She once thought leaving that land and returning to the city was the path to freedom and happiness. But now she understood that the real prison wasn't the external environment, but the greed and dissatisfaction in her heart. Callum had found his happiness and success, while she had forever lost the opportunity to be part of that happiness. As for Fletcher, he wandered Southeast Asia for several years, attempting various business projects, all ending in failure. His reputation had followed him abroad. No one wanted to collaborate with a businessman with a history of fraud. Finally, he was reduced to working as a guide in a small local tourism company, offering services to Western tourists, with a precarious life and uncertain future. During a trip with a tour group, Fletcher happened to see an international report about Callum's mining project. In the photo, Callum stood in front of huge mining equipment, tall and straight, with a determined look. Hard to imagine he was once just an ordinary farmer. That land he once considered worthless had now become an industrial empire valued in the tens of billions. Fletcher's fingers unconsciously touched the screen, as if trying to grasp that wealth that had already slipped through his fingers. His tourists approached with curiosity, asking what he was looking at. He forced a smile. Nothing, just news of an old friend. Old friend. What an ironic title. The person he once tried to deceive was now on the other side of the world, while he had fallen so low. In his Melbourne office, Callum looked at the latest project reports with a feeling of satisfaction. He had successfully transformed his father's legacy into a sustainable business, creating wealth not just for himself and his family, but also bringing development and opportunities for the local community. Audra's incorporation had brought new ecological concepts to the company, making the entire project more balanced and visionary. The office door opened softly, and Audra entered with a stack of documents and a cup of coffee. The new environmental assessment report is ready. She smiled as she set down the coffee. The results are even better than we expected. Callum took the report, but didn't open it immediately. Looking at Audra, thank you. Not just for this, for everything. Audra knew Callum's past and understood the weight behind those words. She gently took his hand. We're partners, Callum, both in business and in life. This is the future we're building together. Callum nodded, feeling an unprecedented calm and certainty. The scars of betrayal might never completely disappear, but life moves forward, with new happiness and opportunities right ahead. He didn't need to forgive those who betrayed him, nor forget that painful experience. He just needed to move forward, value what he had now, and build a better future. The night was deep, but the stars over the Australian continent still shone brightly. On this vast land, each person advances on the path they've chosen, reaping the fruits they've sown and assuming the consequences of their decisions. Callum found wealth and new love on the family land. Lydia lost everything, left only with regret. Fletcher's greed and deception finally led to his downfall. This is the truth of life, and also the price of betrayal. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. We hope to see you in our next story.